This goes.
Right in time for me to burp.
That's what I was waiting for. Welcome to the Njoystic show, Wednesday edition.
Starring the boring bastard and the fucking asshole who just posts spider tweets to me now.
Yeah.
I'm glad you found your niche. You
Well,
son
you you acted last week like I couldn't get any more annoying on Twitter, so I had to prove you wrong because that's what I live for, is proving you wrong.
well, it's just like I sent you that tweet, like, you understand this is a phobia, right? Like, this isn't a rational, like, oh, you jerk, Steve, you know I don't like that. It's like, no, that really fucking messes with me, you asshole.
Yeah.
Those are spiders, like, combining to form, like, an ultra spider or
I know,
something.
that was the most disturbing part about that, is they're like teaming up.
Well, yeah, they're cohabitating, and that leads to collaboration, which leads to the inevitable war between man and arachnid.
Yeah.
Um,
One spider is bad, two spiders is terrifying, a cluster of spiders is just burn it to the ground and never come back. Like,
and Andrew mentioned a really great idea for like a villain, like a psychopath murderer. It would be just somebody who wants to save the world from spiders, to the point where he, like, the only solution is murder. And like I could honestly see myself going down that road if, like you said, if Batman kicked me into a vat of spiders.
yeah,
Uh,
like I was just picturing the most broken mentally a person could be, and then multiplying that by like 100, and that's how I think you would come out of that situation. To
well,
be
I
honest, I think
just
that's how I'd come out. I think that's how any rational person.
yeah. Well, I mean, you'll be bit to shit if you survive, so you'll be fucking gross anyway. So you got that kind of Joker, like, shattered psyche due to how you're just, your appearance is fucked. But now you also have a direction for your hatred, which is goddamn spiders, and like you want to spare people your horrible fate.
Yes,
Um, but the problem is I just watched The Mummy with Brendan Fraser because that's on Netflix,
that is a problem. I mean, that's
and that's a bad movie. Um,
people love
but
it, but I think it's one of those, we love this because it's so terrible.
yeah, it's god awful, but it's really entertaining. And then in the intro, like when the mummy guy, they're doing the prologue, the mummy guy he's getting wrapped up alive and put in the sarcophagus, and then they just pour fucking scarabs on him and then shut the coffin, like, which is dumb on a lot of levels. Like, why are you cursing this guy to be, like, they know they're cursing him to be all powerful in like 1,000 years, but
Well, but it's kind of like us with the environment. Like, yeah, this will be unstoppable, but not my problem.
I but it is their problem because, like, they're still guarding him years and years later when Brendan Fraser is, doing whatever he's doing at the time. Like, they still have like these fucking knights on horseback just sort of watching.
Well, see, that's the thing, is they were so smart and prophetic that they knew Brendan Fraser would be a thing. So that's when the mummy needs to come back and just end it all. Like,
I can't believe he didn't take off after those movies. I thought he would have blown up.
he's one of those guys, though. It's like, he's terrible, but I think all of his movies are terrible in that kind of fun way.
They're all terrible, but I think he's like really damn likable. Like, he just, like, man, he's not a good actor, and he makes even worse decisions on what roles he'll take. But
Well, to
and
be
you gotta
fair, I
kind
don't know if
of
there was
hire
ever
the
a point where
tenacity.
he could afford to choose what roles he takes. It's just like,
Well, it feels like he's tried everything.
yeah.
Like, the Mummy was kind of his action attempt. I know he's done some like drama here and there, and then like he's done family comedies, and those were like
Bedazzled.
some of the worst of the bunch. I
Yes,
don't.
yes. That was not his cup of tea. But
Yeah.
oh, I
He
can't
was
say
in
if it's his cup of tea
Scrubs.
because I guess that phrase means whether or not he likes it. That was not his forte. That was not his strong point. He was in
Yeah.
Scrubs. I didn't know that.
He was like a guest role, and he dies like in one episode.
Oh, so it was just like a
Yeah, it was one of those episodes where Scrubs is like trying to be all fucking dramatic, and that was a weird show.
I hated that because I thought they were good at that, and it would be like the goofiest, like funniest, most hilarious show, and then they'd be like, "Oh, now this watch as all these people have to cope with this like lovable guy dying of cancer," and you're like, "Oh,
Right.
thanks."
Yeah. Well, they did like a whole episode where him and JD are always talking, and then it reveals that JD's just hallucinating him, and that he died originally on the table or whatever. Um, yeah, and that's fucking weird and really out of like character. Like that show just had an identity issue, I think.
Oh, I don't, but I liked it because it was very versatile as far as that goes.
I liked it
but-
for a while. I liked kind of those first few seasons, and then I just I think even the stuff I used to like about it probably wouldn't be the same for me since I've like found funnier shows. And,
Right, right. Your taste has matured in comedy.
right.
But they had such great actors, and I can't think of his name, JD. He's good, but Dr. Cox was amazing, and even the janitor, he's in a few things that we watch now, and I love that actor. You know,
He's in the future.
not enough to like actually learn their names because I never do that. Like, I love sitting around with people
know.
that watch a lot of movies or TV, and they're like, "Oh, so and so's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, who's that?"
I know John C. McKinley. That's Dr. Cox, and that's about it. I know Zach Braff because I liked
Yeah.
Garden State a lot. Garden State was a good movie. The one he did after that, the one he crowdfunded, was a fucking horrible piece of shit.
I assume so because he basically disappeared after that. But
Well, like it was like the spiritual successor to Garden State, which everybody liked, and then he made a movie about parenting, which is, I know there are a lot of parents out there, and I know you love your children, and maybe you relate to that shit, but it's a boring story that's been told multiple times.
yeah.
Like it ain't easy being a parent, but God, I love them. Well, I fucking hope so, man.
Where's the movie about the parents that don't ever learn to cope with it? Like, it's not easy being a kid, and damn it, I regret every minute of it.
That's probably the movies about like mass shooters. That's probably.
I could see Bill Murray doing one of those, though, like, because we're so used to those Hollywood endings, and I love it when a movie doesn't do that. I don't know if you ever saw Nightcrawler with,
Yeah.
yeah, like when you have something like that, and you're like, oh man, this is getting dark, and then it gets to the end, you're like, yeah, that did not get dark ever. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think that was kind of the problem with Nightcrawler was there was really no arc, and it's not that I need like a happy Hollywood ending, but it kind of just ends.
yeah,
a
well,
little
like
bit.
it doesn't really end. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
here's the climax. Okay, yeah, he's just bad. Goodbye.
Yeah, not really a climax. Like that's the thing. There's no real payoff for like the suspense it tries to build up. So it's just sort of like, yeah, okay, well, and then he kept going,
Yeah,
and we probably could have the movie probably could have gone the duration of his life.
but I assume that his antics would catch up with him eventually. But
Well, probably not. I mean, yeah,
he's a
because
pretty smart psychopath. Yeah,
well, I mean, the message that movie's sending is like you can be this horrible piece of shit and you can be very successful. Like, because his whole thing is he's an awful human being, and then by like he's this success story for paparazzi and shit.
I like how it set him up though. Like he's awful. He's like the protagonist villain, but he's not just like they set it up so it's not like, oh, he's just an evil person that's out to be evil. It's like he just has no concept
He
of
literally has no moral compass.
right.
Um,
I liked the movie. It was different. Like, I don't think it's one I'd sit and rewatch a bunch of times, but
I liked it, but I mean, now we live in a time where like liking a movie means kind of different things. Like, do I like a movie enough to buy it? Probably not, but I like that as a
I don't-
throwaway Netflix.
yeah, I don't regret sitting through it. And if it was viewable again for free, I might. But
Yeah, maybe in a long enough time. Sure. It's
speaking
no
of
John Wick.
Speaking of movies, because we're a movie podcast now, I last night I was about ready for bed and I was flipping through. There was nothing on TV and I came across To Kill a Mockingbird because I guess it was Gregory Peck's like 100. I hate when they do this. It's like, oh, it's his 100th birthday. It's like, yeah, but he died, so it's really
He
not.
died. You don't get any more.
Right. But so they were doing a whole marathon, but I realized very quickly that like yeah, I know To Kill a Mockingbird, I know the novel, and I know I've seen the film because I know recognize the characters, but I realized I'd never actually like seen the film like from start to finish. I've just seen bits and pieces of it. So we sat and watched that, and it's almost like it was a classic movie or something. I'm surprised people never refer to it or talk about it.
Yeah. No, nobody watches that. Not let alone like I had to in high school.
Yeah,
my freshman year.
Well, that's probably where I recognize scenes from. We were probably quote unquote had to watch it, and I slept through most of it or something. I don't know. But what's funny to me, and this is so off topic, but whatever, is I know he won an Oscar for his performance in that, and he was good. He was very good. But like most of the movie actually revolves around like the kids and the other characters. It's like he's around for the first like 3/4 of the movie. It's like he's the dad, and he's defending this case, but it really follows the kids. It's like, well, where's their Oscars? No, maybe they got them, but I don't know.
For their little rascals fucking performance, screw that.
Well, it's funny because the one person I always, when I'm watching a movie like that, will look up the actors and actresses, and usually it's like I expect to find things that I've seen them in, but because that movie was made in like 1912, like even the people that played kids in that movie are, well, like I said, it would have been Gregory Peck's 100th birthday yesterday, so even the kids, they're like in their 70s.
Yeah.
Or 80. And then the woman that played the girl, she's been in like 4 things. It's like, wow, her career took off.
Yeah, just like they just end up doing a bunch of weird like noir films, like just
Well, that's
the swan dived in oil.
That's what's funny. Normally, I just assume that they were a child actor or an actress, and they decided not to pursue that career. But it was like, out of the 5 things she's been in, 4 of them were all right about the time of To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think that was her first, and so that's probably, of course, how she got the other roles. And then she wasn't in anything again until 1996.
Well, I think like that also is around a time where maybe it was just harder to be a professional actress or something, or I don't know what, but like I lost my thought. I don't remember where I was going with it.
We don't really ever have a train of thought.
Yeah,
we've got like the spinning teacup ride of thoughts. We're the amusement park of mental.
Here
continuity.
I got it back. I reeled it back in. I imagine that was from around a time where, like, you didn't bank on being a celebrity. Like when you were a kid, that young, like it was cool you did a movie or something, but you probably still prioritized like like a career or like whatever you were doing, like you were going to school for something, like, and maybe acting was just something you did, but it wasn't
right.
Like,
well, and it's
very, and unlike now where it's like if you're in a successful movie, then you're just fucking there all the time in the Hollywood spotlight.
Which is what's so cool when there's these actors that have been really good actors or actresses, or I guess you can call female actresses actors because the gender equality. I don't know. I get so confused about that stuff.
I usually call them all actors, but I sometimes I fuck up and get you feel free to email me like whatever. I will continue to fuck up, but I will also continue to try to address everybody by the same profession. Yeah,
and I'll add the caveat that if I say actress, I don't mean it in any diminutive, like it's different than actor.
Actress means actor junior.
Yeah. But anyway, now I really don't know what I'm talking about, but the actors just actors that have been really successful, and they've been in a lot of big name movies, and then they've like decided, I've got enough money, and they just like disappear. And it's not like they can't get roles or it's like they don't want to. Like you find out, you almost forget about them, and then 10 years later you're watching a movie like, what happened to him? He's living in a ranch in Montana, raising ostriches.
I thought Viggo Mortensen was going to do that after Lord of the Rings. He had to make more money than fucking God, like, after those movies. And I thought he was just going to fucking up and go to Idaho and just stay there. And then he went on to do really fucking graphic goddamn Hitman movies.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. You do what you love. Pretending
I
to.
thought I thought it was hitting really close to home. I thought those were biographies for a while.
Have you played any more Hitman?
Yeah, I was actually playing a little bit last night. Just sort of like I play that like now that I've done kind of all the missions and sort of like the main ways. Now I'm just doing like some of the side challenges here and there. Like they're a little more simple. Like get a specific disguise and then take out your target with their weapon or something. But like there's still kind of that. Like it's still tricky like because you could like get the soldier outfit and get their assault rifle, but once you just go in and blast the dude who you need to blast, then you have to find your way out.
Right.
So it's like I'm still enjoying the game. I just honestly the last few days I haven't had the energy to play much. Like I'm just getting out of this goddamn store remodel fucking bullshit we were doing.
Yay.
So now and Star Wars came out, which was on Blu-ray and shit. So this is, and I don't say the name of the store I work for. It's not hard to figure out if you like follow any of my clues. But
It rhymes with West Try. I'm just trying to throw people off your
West Try.
Yeah.
No, because it couldn't be West Try because West Try would not find a way during probably the biggest movie release in years.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
of the year. We somehow found a way to lose money.
Well,
Like for every, because we do a program where you put $5 down on, it's basically a pre-order that you have to put $5 down for. And like we've been selling this to people since the movie, before the movie came out to theaters, before we even had a release date, we had these barcodes like, hey, you want to pre-order Star Wars? And for every person who came in and just picked up their pre-ordered copy, we lost like $3. Like, I don't know how the fuck you do that.
what? They just weren't. You weren't charging enough, or what?
Well, the whole guarantee is you get the lowest price when it comes out if you pre-order it that way. So I guess it went too low because and there were some other deals going on the day it came out because whoever's in charge of sales in retail apparently does not talk to the actual people in retail and say, hey, this big movie's coming out. Do we really want to have like a goddamn 50% off sale going on the same day? So that was a pretty remarkable.
Well, I'm sure they don't mind losing money right after footing the bill for a huge remodel.
Yeah, and so I had to when I was working yesterday, I had to go into salesman bin, which is not a very good person. If you followed the site at all, you know that I'm not good at hyping shit up. And so every time somebody went to grab their copy, I had to also be like, but be sure to shop around, please. We're actually losing money.
I need to eat today. Tacos. I've only had Taco Bell once.
Yeah, and like my day mostly was going pretty easily, but like I told people that, but I was like, but this isn't good because I kind of want to keep my job, Right. And I won't have one if we're like losing money on the biggest movie release in years.
Thanks, Obama.
Fucking Obama, I knew it. And the problem is like I liked episode 7. And I kind of, like, it had been enough time that I was sort of like, now that it was out, I was thinking, like, yeah, I could watch that again. And all day yesterday, we were playing it in the store.
So I don't need to buy it. I just need to come to your store, like, with a fold-out chair.
I mean, yeah. Well, you don't even have to do that. We have chairs. So.
Oh, nice.
So people could just watch it if they wanted to. Like, we wouldn't really be able to kick them out. Everybody at my store's just too timid to... Like, we had kids coming in yesterday on fucking rollerblades, just rolling around the store, and, like, nobody would tell them not to, and I wouldn't tell them not to. Like, some kids came in on those, what are those things where they're just like the boards with wheels and you just sort of lean forward and back?
Well, they're technically called hoverboards, but I refuse to call them that because they don't hover, and that's bullshit. And like I said, now it pisses me off that they called them that because now in the future, when actual hoverboards come out, what do we have to call those? Like
Hover sticks.
actual hoverboard, actually hovering boards.
Um,
But
it'll probably come from the Oculus, so we call it the Oculus Lift or
I
something.
can't wait till we get those newspaper articles about the people that like accidentally hoverboard out in front of traffic while wearing VR headsets. Like that's our future.
Yeah.
The
Well,
jet.
we'd have to design hoverboards to like it would be a hoverboard at your feet, but around you would be a bubble. So anytime somebody got hit, they would just sort of bounce away.
Bounce.
But you're in the air, so there's really no like crazy ricochet or anything.
I don't know. Now I'm picturing like Rocket League except with humans inside the ball, and that seems fun. By the time you're done playing your game, you have no idea where you're going to end up.
Except the ball blows up, and that sounds like Twisted Metal
Well,
to
yeah.
me.
So I was
That
talking
was
about that on Twitter today. VR, if it's actually here to stay, and we've talked about it before, this first wave of stuff is not going to be like, oh, everybody's going to have a Wave 1, version
yeah
1 Oculus because it's too expensive and needs
right
too much hardware and that kind of thing. But if it's the, beginning of the new trend, there's the more I think about different applications other than just like first person shooter or first person adventure, the cooler like it seems like it could be. And I was just trying to think. The only thing that made me nervous is it's like not really nervous, but apprehensive is knowing that we'll end up getting another wave of like these HD re-releases like PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and even 3 and
yeah
360 before it, where instead of getting new games, we're getting retrofitted existing games. And it's like, well, that's always frustrating. But at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking like, I bet there's a lot of games that either came out recently or even like the past 10, 15 years that would have be really cool reimagined in VR.
yeah you were talking about that, and I kind of agree. Where like I don't want to play. I don't need Devil May Cry to be VR ready. Like that's not that type of game. But games that are either like you could probably do some stuff with first person, but I think like I was kind of with you. Like the ones that seem really cool to me are like the board game sort of like type style. Like I remember mentioning XCOM. Like I think that would be a pretty cool VR game where you're like actually looking down and able to like move your head around
Yeah,
and see
yeah.
the map.
It'd be like
And
just like every movie we've seen in the last 30 years where you have this like interactive tactical 3D map and you're just like looking over it, and that would just give it such a different dimension. Like
yeah,
and I think we'd end up with a lot of games that were you talked about it back in a different application with Grand Theft Auto 5 when they came out with the first person mode. How simply shifting the perspective can make a game feel completely different, even if you're doing the same thing. And I think you'd have that with something like XCOM.
yeah.
And I certainly don't mean different in a bad way. I think it'd be different in a really, really cool way.
Yeah. Hell, a GTA game I think would be really fun in VR.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I have nothing against. There would be certain first-person game. I could imagine like a first-person VR Silent Hill, if I could live through it without having a heart attack. Could be
Oh yeah, a fucking
ridiculous.
like PT style, just sort of
Right.
Silent Hill in VR. That would fuck me up.
But then something as simple as like RC Pro Am from the Nintendo days, where obviously updated graphics, not like 3D 8-bit, but where you're like looking down on a overhead track and like racing around little cars, but in VR. That would be so cool because it would be like we always want to. I don't know if you ever had those like tracks, those race car tracks that you would build, like the actual
Yeah,
toys. And hell, I'm old enough that when we had them, the tracks actually had slots, like you couldn't change lanes or anything. It's just like, oh, you push this button, and whichever electric motor in the car is better, that car will win. But like always wanting that, like I wish I could have this racetrack and these like remote control cars that you could drive like real cars, and you would be able to do that with VR. And I don't know. There's just so many really cool things that gets me more excited for it. But I think we
Yeah.
have a
Problem is there,
ways to go before we know whether or not that'll actually take off as something that consumers will accept.
right? Yeah, and it's just it's. I really am wishing it well, but while we're in this stage of like, I'm kind of waiting for that sort of software that will actually sell one to me. Like, it's too expensive for me to just like be I'll beta test it for you. Like, I need it. Like, I need something in it for me
Right.
beyond like, hey, it's new technology.
And see, that's the second part of it. It's really expensive. It's not like, we're working adults. If I really, really wanted to, I could save up and I could buy it within a year, probably.
Right.
But at the same time, do I want to spend that kind of money for the first version of something when I know in like 3 years we'll probably have better hardware that works better, that's cheaper? Like, why would I
Right.
spend more now to get like you said, basically a beta version of the hardware?
Yeah, and it's not just the cost for that hardware; it's what you would need to upgrade on your computer. It's if you're on the PS4, you might not have a camera, so you have to buy the camera too, and that's another $100.
Or if
And
you don't have a PS4, like somebody in the room
yeah,
here, then you got to buy that and the headset. Like the
or,
headset
or
price is like you see that, and I'm like, that's not bad. It's what, $399 for
yeah,
just like the cheaper bundle, but then you need a PlayStation 4 and the camera too. So, eh.
yeah,
But I'm really interested. The only other problem is it's got the whole like 3DS, DS, or whatever issue where it's going to be really hard to show off the game to people that don't have VR. Like,
yeah.
I love
That's
getting press releases for 3DS games because like, here, click here for screenshots. They're like, that looks like shit. Like, and I'm
yeah.
not putting the system down. I like the 3DS in motion, like in practice when you're playing it. I think it looks neat. I mean, obviously it's not a graphical powerhouse that a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One is, but
It's not really meant to be,
no, and it looks
and
perfectly fine for this, but in
yeah,
screenshots
and
it does not.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, screenshots will always inflate it, make it look like kind of blurry. Like, there's nothing harder than like coming up with screenshots for a 3DS game review
Right.
because it always fucking looks like trash. Um, but like I was watching, like, the Giant Bomb guys have been doing a lot of streaming for all this VR stuff, and it's you watch it and it's just this looks like shit.
Right.
Um, not it's better when you're actually like in it and experiencing it, but it's like it's such a hard thing to show off, and I I, I think that's gonna be one thing that kind of limits it. Like, I think a lot of people just sort of see this as the future, and I see it like I see its place at best more of a as an optional, like a reliable optional thing for certain types of games. And part of that is due to the fact that like you can't really make a trailer that
Right.
accurately shows off what your game's about. Like, you can, because all the trailers for VR games I've seen have been the same sort of stuff that they were doing with like the Kinect and the Move and the Wii, where it's like just a bunch of fucking happy assholes on a couch while their friend stands in the middle of the room like a jackass.
Yeah.
And
Like,
it's like
oh, hee hee hee.
it's like the game could be the most fucking fun game in the world, but you're selling it to us like it's just this weird fucking spectacle.
And
So it's hard for me to see the hardware beyond just being a weird spectacle.
here's the other thing I've noticed. I think there's been a lot of marketing that's done VR a huge disservice. For example, they actually had the Oculus headset on the Today Show the other, like last week or the week before.
Yeah, you talked about that. Like, why the fuck does Matt Lauer
Yeah,
get
right,
described?
exactly. That pissed me off. Al Roker's cool. He can do it, but Matt Lauer, that pisses me off. But
Fuck them both. None of them care.
right, and worse, it was just like a 30-second. I don't like the Today Show to begin with, by the way, but it was like a 30-second segment. It cut to them like after commercial break, and they're all wearing the headset, sitting around their table, and they're all just kind of doing one of these like waving their heads around, like I see a tiger. Oh, hee hee hee. And all you see as a viewer, if you're not familiar with, we at least follow the industry and the technology. But if you've never been around VR, you haven't been reading about it and that kind of stuff, all you see are these five assholes with these goofy looking headsets on,
Going like this.
yeah, giggling for about 30 seconds and like, oh yeah, haha, that's neat. Well, that's not only does that not sell anybody on it, but it really gives a bad impression of what it is, because then everybody's like, oh yeah, it's this dumb little toy. And for a lot of people, I mean, that's what it would be, I guess. But
Yeah.
even worse than that, I think, because that's just the Today Show getting into territory that's way out of their realm anyway. But Steam, I don't know if you've noticed Steam's store page. Like, it's been launching with like VR is here. That's their like big banner when you open Steam.
Oh yeah, and it's look at that. I just opened it up. It's fucking.
Terrible. It's like
It's out of 1991. Like
Right.
come to your local arcade.
like photoshopped lasers and stuff in it. Like woo, and it just makes it. But I think that goes back to what we just said. I mean, how else? How do you show it off?
I know they could probably do better.
I would hope so.
and I
because-
hope they do one day. But there's also kind of the other thing I've been thinking about with it, and none of this what we're saying is to like immediately jump on the like, oh, it's not going to work. I think these are just honest sort of criticisms of like these are actual issues that VR is going to have to hurdle over, and it's not going to be easy. And one of them is, like I said, I've been so fucking exhausted lately to play anything, even loading up Stardew Valley.
all right.
I've really had to like work towards. How am I going to feel putting on like suiting up
Yeah, you have to
to
like
play a game?
clear
Like,
out your area so you have room to move and get this headset on and
and the headset's kind of like, even if I don't care how fucking comfortable you make it, having a giant goddamn thing here is weird.
yeah, especially when you're tired and you don't really want your head's
Yeah.
already hanging. But
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean that would be a big thing because I've definitely had times where I'll sit down and be like, okay, I guess I'll play something. Oh, my controller's not plugged in. Well, fuck this.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it take like I have to get up to grab my PS4 controller, and I can't tell you how many evenings I've just sat around and watched fucking wrestling because I didn't want to get up and start
Right.
playing Far Cry or something.
and before you old people say our generation's lazy, that's the thing that goes back. That's why every TV show since like 1940 has that point where they're all sitting on the couch and something comes on and nobody can find the remote and they just don't bother getting up to change
Yeah,
it.
just watch it.
I mean, that's human nature. You're like, oh, the remote's over there. Well, fuck.
Yeah,
Well,
the difference is I can just do this, and then I can pull up whatever I want because I'm right by my keyboard at all times. And what I wanted to watch this last weekend was wrestling, which I'm sure you enjoyed
yes.
with your fucking
No,
Twitter timeline
actually-
going crazy.
I love that because I don't watch wrestling, but we like The Walking Dead. But Tara works most of the time, or she worked last Sunday, like at night, so I had to wait for her to go home to watch it. And normally that means come 9 o'clock, I have to just turn my computer off and go find something else to do. But there's not much to do at 9 o'clock on a Sunday. But this Sunday, like even though it was The Walking Dead finale, season finale, everybody was talking
Fucking
about
WrestleMania, man.
yeah, and I'm like, this is great. I can stay on Twitter and not have to worry about spoil. And then all of a sudden, people start, I can't believe so and so character just did that, or I can't believe this happened. I'm like, ah, fuck. So,
Yeah.
but I made it to about half the way through Walking Dead without having to turn Twitter off before I had to like abort. And
Yeah, I tried because they gave WrestleMania away for free this year. Like they want everybody to sign up to their network. So I was like, you know what? I honestly I didn't care about WrestleMania. There's like a smaller scale show that I really wanted to watch with a Japanese wrestler who I really enjoyed, and because his finishing move is he just knees people in the head.
nice.
And it's really
You know,
simple.
they have a whole sport about that called MMA.
Yeah, but this one, like, he'll do it like after somebody jumps off the top turnbuckle. There's still a reason to watch wrestling, and it's because they can do things that you can only do when you choreograph. it.
Right.
Like
Well,
there's
that's isn't that what's funny? They do this stuff like in wrestling, and it's like, oh, he needs a guy to, and it looks so like cool and theatrical. And then if you watch MMA, they're actually kneeing him in the head, but it looks so
brutal.
Well, most of the time, until they go back and show the replay, you're like, oh, his head is facing the wrong direction.
His jaw came off.
But most of the time, the things that they do in MMA don't look as
And,
big
and
a
that's
deal because it's realistic. They're not winding up to here to like throw a punch.
and that's what's frustrating about being a wrestling fan is like because MMA is way more interesting to watch, in my opinion, at least. But wrestling should be, or at least comparable, because you're scripting it. Like, there's no reason you shouldn't have just a full whatever your event is, like however many hours. It should just be nonstop entertainment because you get to like actually plan how your fight's gonna go. And instead, it's terrible because the people fucking writing it are retarded.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of hardcore wrestle fans over the last like 2 years doing nothing but complaining.
Well, I mean that's internet wrestling fans,
Well, that's
and
true, too.
I'm one of them. It's really hard to please me too, but like the match this Japanese guy had, one of the spots is the guy he was wrestling, who's also really good. Like you know the basic structure of a wrestling ring, right? I know
Yes.
you're not a fan, but you know the turnbuckle, like
Right.
the ropes are the three. From the outside of the ring, he jumps through the turnbuckle underneath the ropes to the other end of the outside and like grabs a guy's head and smashes it into the ground. One of the most athletic things I've ever seen anybody do, and the guy doing it has a fucking beer gut. So
So there's hope for me. I could be an athlete,
you could be a professional wrestler, absolutely.
not at
But, like,
5'6". Well, I'd be one of those like sideshow character wrestlers that it's not
Well, I mean,
really
it would-
serious, but
it would fucking work in the old days. Like every wrestler, like in the old fucking black and white days, were just these out of shape fucking dudes.
yeah,
who-
I know.
They were just the people who would whoop your ass in a bar, and like somebody said, like, "Hey, how would you like to get paid for it?"
See, that's what I'd like to imagine back in those days. You'd come up and be like, to a wrestling promoter, be like, I'd like to be a wrestler. And I'm like, well, what are your qualifications? You're like, I have a Speedo, okay? And I've
Are
got
you willing to knife
boots.
your own head to look like you bleed?
I've got boots that lace up to my knees. You're hired.
My mom made me some underpants with my name on the back.
Are they colorful? Yes.
They can be. But yeah, he went to do that spot against this Japanese guy. He jumps through the ropes, and as he like jumps through, it's this weird like torpedo dive, and the Japanese guy just kicked him in the head, and it looked like it hurt more than fucking anything. Because some things you can kind of fake in wrestling, it's really hard to fake like
Well,
when you're
that's-
falling into somebody's foot.
That's the thing, too. A lot of people write it off completely as it's fake. It's like,
Well, they're not
It still
throwing
doesn't
real punches, but there's really no way to fake
contact.
getting
right.
suplexed off a turnbuckle.
Right.
Like you might know how to land in a way that's safer for you, but you're still getting fucking dropped from like 10 feet in the air.
All right, if the average person does that, and they're not getting out of bed the next day because they'll be covered in
Yeah.
heating pads and been gay. But
Yeah, and so I watched that event and I was like, you know what, that was pretty good. Maybe WrestleMania will be good. Maybe I'll be a fan again, you know, because I've watched wrestling since I was a kid. And then WrestleMania was pretty bad, and I was like, I said on Twitter like that was the worst wrestling event to like give away if the idea was like you wanted people to stick around, because everything that happened in it, you couldn't care what happened the next night. You know, like, where do these characters go? It doesn't matter. Everyone you liked lost. So like, even though it's fake and like the wins and losses don't matter in terms of like a record or anything, like momentum dies.
right.
So all these characters you want to see, it's like you wouldn't read a comic if Batman just kept fucking losing for like 60 straight issues,
right.
because then he's not a hero anymore. So yeah, I will probably it's a free month of wrestling, so I look forward to those tweets. But after that month's over, I'm probably done.
Done. Yeah. Oh well, I'm sure wrestling will miss you.
Probably not. They're fucking. Somehow they're still going. And like I thought the overall product has sucked for like 5 years, so barring some exceptions. But yeah, that's how I've mostly been spending my time. I did play some Stardew Valley, and I got kind of pissed. Yeah, well, that's me. I can get mad at
I
anything.
think,
This is
yeah.
proof. But I got a quest from Clint, your local piece of shit blacksmith, who always closes shop way too fucking early and opens way too late. Um, he wanted like 20 copper ore, which is a really simple quest, probably the easiest one I've gotten because I already had like 50 in my storage. But when I got the quest, it was too late to go to his shop. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do it tomorrow. So I grabbed the copper ore out of my thing. I go over to him and he doesn't say anything. I gift it to him and he just says, that makes me depressed. And I'm like, you fucking wanted it.
I bet you the quest expired overnight, and then
No,
you're just
it
like,
was still
there.
still in my menu, and I was even like, "This is Clint, right?" I go to my social circle, I'm like, "Yeah, that's him. What the fuck?" And I went online, and people said like they were having the same like glitch,
Uh,
and they were like, "Well, you have to like drop it and like pick it back up, and then give it to him." And I can't give it to him because I had already given him a gift for the day, and which is this fucking stupid thing.
thing, yeah.
Um,
I know. I mean, in real life, if somebody wants to give me one gift, that's great. If they want to give me two, cool. Three
Well,
works too.
Well, I wish the quests weren't like dependent on the gift mechanic.
Right. It should be you talk to them and it pops up in the dialogue. But
Yeah, it should be like they should automatically know you have the thing they need, and it should just be like give them the thing they want. And
like
then,
every other video game in the world does.
yeah, instead it like locked me out of completing the quest, and because I couldn't do it the day before because I got the quest too late, then I was fucked because the next day goes by and the quest's over. Because I only have 2 days before I can. I have to cut it off. Otherwise, everyone will be coming up to me with copper ore. Like,
I'll tell you the one that pisses me off, the shopkeeper that pisses me off is Willie, the fishing guy. Because there's been so many times where I'm like, okay, well, he closes at 4, so I have to wrap this up before 4 and go sell him my fish. And he'll get there and it'll be 3, and the shop's open, but he's not fucking there.
right.
And you're like, okay, can I
Yeah,
just...
I mean, fucking people aren't around. Like, I hate this town more than anything.
I know. I was talking about it today because somebody was talking about... oh, they said because apparently if you get friendship up enough on people, you can get a spouse, you can get married, and
Yeah.
then the spouse does stuff around the farm. And I said, that will never happen because I hate every single one of these people.
Yeah, like I try to be fucking people's friends. Like the closest I've gotten now is I figured out like the girl with purple hair really likes pretty goth shit. So like a lot of the shit I'm finding in the mines, she really digs. But I don't like I'm not pursuing it. Like there's nobody I want to marry because I'm like you're all fucking assholes.
Right.
Um,
Maybe the
stay
guy in
off-
the
Stay
wheelchair.
off my goddamn farm. Don't touch my cat. That's
Maybe
the
that's what it is.
Stardew Valley I'm becoming.
The wheelchair guy's wife seems kind of nice. Is there any way we could like accidentally wheel him off a cliff and then be like, oh, of course she's also like 100 years old, but that means she'd be the best
that
around the
means
farm
nothing
because
if
she
you're
would.
a total psychopath.
Well, and she'd be very good around the farm because she'd know all that. Like, she probably grew up working the land. So,
I'm kind of in this weird, like, I'm going to be a success in spite of all you people.
right. And
I'm
that's
gonna-
the cool thing about the game is you can pursue the different things and not.
Yeah,
not pursue other
I
stuff.
like, I still like the progression of just like, like being able to do stuff around my farm more efficiently. I like expanding my farm. I like mining. Like the adventure guild stuff I'm kind of into because those are the people who are just they're more my type of video game character. Like go down there and kill shit. Once you've killed enough shit, we'll give you something. I was like, all right,
Cool, I can handle that.
that's the simplest goddamn arrangement. Instead
Do you
of
need
like
me to go into town and kill some stuff too?
instead of all these flaky assholes who are like, bring me 20 things. Oh, not today.
I've
I don't
lost
want-
my purple shorts.
I want 20 things, but I don't want them right now and not that way. Like, fuck you, Clint.
Oh, look, your crop that only lasts one day has bloomed, but the shop's closed because it's Wednesday.
Yeah, so
In
yeah,
fairness,
that,
not
that
any crop seems to go bad in your inventory after a day, but it's so fucking. It's I crop. My biggest harvest is always on a Wednesday.
yeah. I got into summer and all my shit was dead.
I
And I
yeah,
was,
that I hated too. I was like, see, I didn't realize, or I didn't find the community center stuff. How you can like the different plaques, and there's like,
yeah,
I didn't find that until it'd been a little while. It was still spring, but I ended up on the spring harvest branch, just needing like a cauliflower and a parsnip, and a parsnip grows in like a day, and I had been harvesting an assload of them, but I had just sold them all, so I didn't have one. And the cauliflower takes forever to be ready to harvest, but I had one that was like a day or two away, and I wake up and it's all dead because apparently when spring turns to summer, it just dies overnight. And I was pissed. So now I have to wait a whole in-game year before I can complete that damn branch.
yeah. And well, I just sort of throw in shit when I can.
Yeah,
Like,
well, once I've learned about that whole mechanic, like I didn't. What it was is you talk to the wizard and they're like, you can read this stuff now. I'm like, cool, but you're always so. That's one thing the game does. I think that's because I like almost hate the game because it's all work, it's all chores, but I can't stop playing it because it gives you so much stuff. It's like, well, crap, today I need to mine this stuff, and by the time you're done doing that, the next day comes and you need to do something else.
yeah. I mean, it's really weird. Like, this is a game where it's just packed with fucking busy work, and I hate the people. And if I wanted to go off and be a hermit, I'm not too far away from that in my own life. But for some reason, it's still escapism to me, and it's really enjoyable because there's just this sense of accomplishment of like, because you can just visually see I made all this, and now I can I can pull my crops and like I get to reap the rewards however they come to fruition, and I can build new shit around it, and then people come near your farm and you're like, you get away from my cat, bang. And,
Well, that's what I was just thinking is we are talking about how much I hate the. My goal is to have this huge successful farm on the outskirts of town, but if anybody wanders near it, to chase them off with my axe, like just start chopping at them until they go away. But I don't know, like. I talked about it. The other funny thing that happens is I'll have a goal. Like, okay, well, I'm pretty close to having enough stuff to buy, have a building built on my farm, an animal coop or whatever. And so I'll collect all those. And then in the process of doing that, I earned enough money. I'm like, oh, now, and I have enough ore. I'm like, I can upgrade my tools because I still have just the standard tools. But then everything's closed for the night, so I'm like, oh, I have to go home and go to bed so I can do it tomorrow. And then that's when you save is overnight, and I'm like, I don't feel like playing another full day.
yeah.
So like I always get right to the precipice of like the payoff, and then like quit playing for 3 days.
Yeah, that's why I haven't played it these last couple of days, because like I can't quit whenever I want.
Right.
And I know how, like, I can't just do one day, but I don't want to be on the hook to have to go 5 nights, in that game, and then like, okay, now I'll go to bed. Like, I wish I was able to just save and quit whenever I want, and not just spam autosaves, but just whenever I exit the game, just keep me there, because I might have gotten a rare item from a geode, but it's only 10 a.m.
I know, and at the same time, the game is so good about making you have to manage your time that you could just go back home and go to bed to save, but you're like, then I waste a whole damn day.
Yeah, and then the fucking next thing you know, you wasted all your entire summer season.
Right. But I don't know. It's funny. I enjoy it, but it's work.
Yeah, I really need to build like the bridges and shit around town, because I feel like my scope of the game is really narrow right now. Like, there's so much shit that's like cut off to you that's like, bring 500 pieces of wood and we'll fix it. And of course, but that means I have to interact with the fucking people, and they're assholes who are trying to take advantage of me.
I don't know. Chopping down trees is one of my favorite things in that game, because you just stand there. You don't have to talk to anybody. You get to destroy stuff.
Yeah, but I don't think you can just build it yourself. I think you have to go to like Robin or what's her face, the
The one on the
carpenter.
beach you can. You literally just get like 200 pieces or 300 pieces of wood and you go click on the bridge and it builds it. But
Oh.
I don't know about the other ones. And I
I
do.
also need to build those sprinklers.
Yeah, that's the part that, and that's the biggest reason why I can't like just like save and then go get the stuff that I want. Like, okay, I'll go buy my barn and my tools and stuff. It's like, because first I have to spend 10 minutes watering my fucking crops. My
I don't have that many, so
my
I'm just
favorite
waiting
thing,
until I can afford to.
my favorite thing in the world is waking up and hearing it raining out because it's like I don't have to water shit today.
Yeah. I usually go to the mines on those days
Yeah,
because you
I
get a lot of cool shit for doing that.
I like the mines and I like fishing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of fishing. That's basically my income because I don't grow enough shit to really make a lot of money off it. So I fish like all fucking day, and then like you always catch like these rare fish, and they sell high. So.
Yeah, yeah. And now I've got I did complete one of the branches in the community center, and the reward was 3 more crabbing buckets. So now I've got a total of 4 out there, and that helps. 'Cause
I haven't made my crabbing bucket yet.
yeah. Well, I haven't made one because it takes a hell of a lot of resources, but I got one. I think I bought it just from the fisherman guy, my first one, or maybe you get it at some point. I thought as a reward. And then, like, so one of the branches in the community center, when you collect all this stuff, gives you 3 more crabbing buckets.
Mm.
And that's very helpful because that's free stuff. But Stardew, like I said on Twitter, my biggest disappointment is that I don't own overalls to wear when we talk about it.
Just a bit of straw
Yeah.
in your mouth. Yeah. You were playing. Well, I don't know how much you've been playing it. Hyper Light
Yeah,
Drifter.
that was going to be the next thing I wanted to talk about because
Yeah, I'm curious about it.
I said it on Twitter the first time I played it. It's a game that I think you would really like, but if I've learned one thing over the years is that I have no idea how your taste in games actually works. A lot of times I'm right, but then there's times where I'll play something that I think I'm like Ben would love this, and you hate it. But Hyperlight is really cool. I haven't played it as much as I'd like to, just because it's hard, and it's exactly like you've been saying. We've been so busy at work and stuff. You get home, and the last thing you want to do is like sit down and
And just get your ass kicked.
right. But it's really cool. It's a hard game to describe. There's a lot of elements, and I never played the game, but just from you talking about it and reading about it, that remind me of something like Fez, where basically this whole world, there's other characters and stuff, some friendly, and of course a lot of enemies, and signs and backstory, but you don't get any language with it. Like some of it, you'll come across a character that's laying there maybe dying, and you can interact with them, and it'll show you like a series of still pictures, and you have to try to kind of piece together in your head what's going on. But even the game menus, if you go to a shopkeep, like everything's in this gibberish written language. So a lot of it's just this like mysterious world and trying to kind of piece together what's actually going on. As far as the fighting, the mechanics, it's so snappy, and really it's based around one of your buttons does this like dodge, like teleport almost, and then you have your sword, and then you eventually, well, almost right away, you get a gun. And the gun, you can sit and aim it. Like if you hold the one trigger down, then you can use the right stick to aim and before you fire. But the action's just way too fast for that usually. And you can also just kind of hit the trigger without aiming, and it'll fire in the general direction that you're facing, but it's much less accurate. And you refill your ammo by slashing stuff, so you're not constantly running around looking for ammo crates, but it balances it. You can never sit on the other side of the screen and just spam your gun, but sometimes it's really helpful when you're fighting an enemy to turn and fire off a quick few shots to try to kill something that's coming at you from behind. And most of the enemies are quick, and it's all about timing and dodging, and it's just very challenging. But a lot of it's exploring this world and trying to figure out what's going on and where to go, and there's a lot of like environmental puzzle solving as well. It's a really cool game. It's tough. There's so many collectibles. You just throughout the overworld and even in the dungeons, you find these little tokens, And I think how it works is that's what you use to buy your upgrades, but like I haven't found out for sure yet because, like I said, everything is none of the menus say like, oh, this costs 4 of these things. You have to just kind of watch the UI and how it updates. And you're like, well, it looks like I've collect 4 of these, it gives me a token, and now I've got 2 tokens and 3 tokens. And when you go to the different skill vendors, it's like, okay, I think this thing costs 2 tokens. But there's a ton of things to collect, and then there's like 4 or 5 main areas of the map that each have their own boss, and I don't know if it opens up further once you beat those. But in order to even get to the boss, you have to go through a bunch of mini dungeons, and a lot of that's just trying to figure out where to go and what you need to do. It's fun and it's challenging and it's addicting, and it's got the collectible stuff that you like, and it doesn't seem like anything's gonna like lock you out of it. Like you can always go back to different areas and re-explore them.
Almost like it's a game about exploration.
Yeah.
Um,
And there is, I mean, there's areas where you'll go through maybe a 5 minute stretch where you're not running into enemies, but there's a lot of it's not like Titan Souls is the game it reminds me of the most, and I know you didn't play that either. But Titan Souls is almost like this overhead, a lot of ways similar, no written dialogue or language or that you can understand. Although in Titan Souls, after you beat it, you can unlock it and go back and replay and actually get what they're saying.
right.
But in Titan Souls, there's no enemies; it's just boss fights. So Titan
Yeah.
Souls, the majority of it is
More shadow than
Right.
like Dark Souls.
But Hyperlight has plenty of just regular enemies. I haven't even actually done a boss fight yet because I haven't made it through any of like the temple areas all the way to the boss.
Yeah. It looks really cool. It's on my Steam wish list. I'll probably pick it up whenever I get paid.
And I'll say if you do it soon, it's still on sale. Although it's one of those like this game just released
like
sales where
$2.
right.
I mean, like $20 seems fair for that game. It just
Well, I think it's 13 while it's on sale, isn't it?
it's 17.
Oh.
But it's the same thing with Dark Souls 3. Like I'm gonna have to wait a couple of days before I can pick up Dark Souls 3 because this processor just like fucking cut my knees out, and then had a friend's birthday today, so even more money
Damn you!
went away.
Yeah, this was one of those fun paycheck periods where we get season tickets to the Crew. We've talked about that. It's a local soccer team, and I always do it on the pay plan because it's just easier than paying the big chunk up front. And
Right.
I thought last month was the last payment, but this month was the last payment. And it was funny because I went online to check my bank account, I think yesterday, just for something else. And I like pull it up and it's like, your checking account is negative 43. But it wasn't actually, or it said that's how much I had left to spend because the 2 transactions, the Crew tickets and one other small thing, hadn't come out yet, but they were pending. And I'm like, well, shit. And I had the money like in my savings account to transfer over. But I'm like, yeah, there's no way I can justify buying anything until I get paid on Friday.
Yeah, when you get to like that low sort of like this is lessons on how to not budget. Like I think my account has like 100 something bucks in it now, and like it's at that point where it's like, okay, this literally has to go to feeding me until next Thursday.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. I'm the kind of person that, I know a lot of people that are better with their money and keeping track of it, that are okay with like living like I've got $23 in here, that means I can go spend 22. I'm the kind of guy, if my checking account gets anywhere near like $100, I start to get that like nervous, like I don't like this feeling.
Yeah, just the last thing I ever want is like, God forbid my account went under $30, I would fucking lose my mind.
Right, and that's where I'm at right now. It's an unusual thing. Fortunately, I'm fortunate enough to have a job that lets me not get there very often. But right now I'm there, so and then part of that was I shouldn't have bought Hyperlight like I did. But I thought those Crew tickets were like $100 an installment.
You thought you were done.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'm like, well, now I'm done. But shit.
Yeah, I don't really regret it. I just I needed this new processor eventually, and
I can tell too because our podcast is much faster this week.
It's booking. But Yeah, I knew it would be tight afterwards. Like I knew, like you, okay, I'm basically taking out like half a paycheck here for
Now,
just computer part.
do you do the thing? I do the like the Homer Simpson in the Simpsons Go to Australia thing, where he asks, he's like, "Oh, I want one of your famous large beers," and they set down like a 30-gallon can in front of him, and he's like gets this disappointed look. The guy's
Yeah.
like, "What's wrong?" It's like, "Oh, it's pretty big, I guess." But like anytime I upgrade my hardware on my computer, or for like other things, but that computer is a great example. I end up like talking myself into these like most unrealistic expectations,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and then I go to run a game. Like now I can run this at the highest possible settings, and it still doesn't. And then I'm just kind of
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah, like it's pretty cool. Like, because I went to system like the can you run it system requirements thing, and it's pretty cool now that I can like actually put games into that and it'll say, yeah, you can run it.
instead of just like laughing, like,
Yeah,
ha ha ha.
and I mean like that thing wasn't accurate.
No, and your
Because
system
I
before wasn't bad. It just wasn't
well
high
yeah, my
end.
CPU was the thing was it was overclocked,
Yeah.
and that doesn't detect your CPU speeds being beyond its limits. It just sees what you have. And so it would tell me I couldn't run anything, which wasn't exactly true. But now it's good to know that I have an i5 in there. It's going to be solid at least.
Well,
And
did you play Metal Gear on PC? I thought you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's that's what I mean is that that's a perfect example of like they're saying like absolutely not, you can't run that, and it ran like a dream. That game ran surprisingly well.
Now you just
For
don't
how
have to
good
worry about your CPU bursting into flame while you're running something. And
yeah, and even like that old CPU on my motherboard, like overclocking on that it was made to overclock that CPU pretty much because it was as simple as going into your BIOS and clicking a giant button that said overclock it,
yes.
and it worked great. But now I don't really have that option. Like overclocking on this doesn't work as well, but it's faster anyway, so it doesn't matter. Um, it's the thing I was more happy about was that I did it myself.
Hmm.
Um, like the last couple of times I've been working with computers, it was me and my brother helping build mine, and then I helped him build his, and it was always a fucking clusterfuck. And there's a lot about like PC building I still am kind of hopeless about. Like once you get to the point where you actually have to do the wiring, I'm lost. But but my brother has been sick these last couple of days, and so I decided, I don't know, fuck it. How hard can it be? We just did it, so I know how the inside of a computer looks. I should be able to swap out the CPU, no problem. And like every time we've done it, every time it's gotten to the point where we're doing the CPU, it like this. It turns out like replacing or installing a CPU is probably the easiest thing you'll do with your computer, but it's also the thing you could fuck up and like it would be the most devastating
Right.
because CPUs have all those pins underneath them. And if you bend one pin, you almost definitely broke your CPU and you might have broken your motherboard. So you could be fucked.
Well, the other thing is, the last time I built one, it's been a long, long time too. This one I have now is just a pre-built, Amazon job.
Right.
Um, but like you're starting to get into all that. Well, you need this thermal
Thermal
glue
base.
paste,
Yeah.
yeah. And stuff. When I see in the '90s, when I was getting ready to go to college, I built and it was cool because it was one of those rigs that like all my friends were jealous of because I was the only one that actually had a dual CPU system, dual
Core.
processor, not a core. They were literally
Just two
two
CPU.
CPUs, but it was because I was going to school for computer animation, so I needed something. Before they had dual core, and having two processors helps with the rendering because it's the same principle. One can do one thing while the other does another.
Sure.
But back then it was super easy because all the CPUs still were only needed to be cooled by the heat sinks, the big metal porcupines on their back. So it was literally like, here's a CPU, plug it in. Like you said, you had to be a little careful not to bend anything, but you could look at the shape
As
of the
long as
thing and look at the shape of the holes, and as long as you can do one of those plastic toys that you have when you're two, where you put the pegs in the
yeah, as long as you don't force anything,
right.
as long as you let it drop into place and you kind of at most you kind of give it a nudge to like kind of okay, it's it's not wiggling or anything. Once you're there, like that's all there is to it, and then you lock it back into place, and it feels like oh, am I gonna fucking break it? But that's pretty much PC stuff now. Is everything just feels like you're breaking it, but really it's
There's a
fine.
lot more like snap and go stuff now than it used to be too. A
Well,
lot,
it's just like a weird kind of like as long as you're cautious, as long as you're afraid you're going to break something, you're probably not going
right.
to.
And for the
Um,
most part, most things are more durable than they look, but the pins are definitely something you have to watch
um,
for.
but the problem, like now, things like click into your motherboard, and that always takes way more force than I'm ever expecting. Like RAM's pretty bad about it, but video cards, like
Cards, yeah.
for my brothers, like maybe I told this last week, but he was not getting any display when we put it all together and we plugged it in, and it was like, oh shit, why isn't it working? And I was trying to look up online like what to troubleshoot, and he came into my room and he was like, okay, I either just put it in the video card in all the way or I just broke my motherboard. So because he
Because
just
it like
shoved
finally
in.
shoved it in. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all it needed. And I've been having these display problems, and it seems to help that I went back in and shoved that fucker back
Back
in.
in. Yeah.
But every time we've ever built a PC, there's always the stage of putting in the processor, and then you apply the thermal paste. And every video I've watched online, people have always put too much on. You're just supposed to put like a pea-sized
Right. The thing is,
amount.
if you have too much, then it can drip and
If
get
it
on other components, and that can be
if it
bad.
gets on your motherboard, yeah, you're fucked.
Right.
So but it's also it's one people kind of overthink a little bit. Like, does it need to be evenly spread? As soon as you put the heatsink on it, it'll spread the way it needs to. It's just about getting that sort of layer of paste between the heatsink and the CPU. But every time we do it, we got these sort of bigger. They're not the stock ones that come with the CPU. We got our own, and like lining it up, it's because it's this big bulky thing that connects to the fan, and it's great because it's really quiet, but it's also it's gigantic and it's tough to line up. So every time we've done it, it's always been like I'm holding it or my brother's holding it, and it's like, okay, am I lined up? No. Okay, move it to the left. Am I lined up? Yes. All right, now you're not. Well, too late. Now it's fucking on it.
Yeah.
So and you just kind of go with that, and it ends up working fine. It's kind of that. It's the same thing where it's like as long as you are worried about fucking it up, you probably
It
won't.
just has to be mostly on. All this
Yeah.
conversation just reminded me of a story my friend told me over the weekend, though, and it was hilarious. His parents recently took their computer into one of the local stores, not like Best Buy or something. It's actually a little shop that's been around. My family's very first computer in 1990 came from these people, but because it was just running slow and it was all that. Parents have a great way of like touching a computer and just turning the
Just
monitor
like
on. They get so
fire.
much
Yeah.
malware and that kind of shit. So they took it in for that, and it was funny because when they went and picked it up, the people had fixed it, but the guy was like, "Yeah, well, we were in there." He's like, "Your motherboard showed some signs of aging, and it's probably about time to get a new one. Some signs of wear. It's getting pretty old. Like a motherboard doesn't show sign. It's not a moving part. Like,
You open up your case, it just goes.
right? Now, I mean, maybe it's dusty, but that's not really signs of wear. That's signs of needing a air can or whatever." But it was just funny. Now he said it could have been something as well as his mom's not very tech savvy as far as that. Maybe she was misinterpreting what he said, and when she relayed the story to him, she might have changed the words a bit to her understanding of it. But it was just hilarious to me picturing this like. It's kind of like looking at a car and you're seeing like the ball bearings or something and a fan starting to go. And you're like, yeah, there's signs of wear. But the same thing with a computer. Like, in fact, I think I still have that dual core computer from 1999 is when I built it. It might be down in my basement, and other than the like thick layer of dust, it looks the same now as it did in 1999.
Yeah.
Now it won't boot up if I plug it in, but that's a different story.
That's another problem. But yeah, so while I was putting in the new CPU myself, like I kind of just gave up trying to line up the heatsink, and I was just kind of like, fuck it.
Close
like
enough.
it's never where it should be. So once I put like the pea-sized thermal paste on it, I was just like, all right, because I have to screw it on anyway, and it's gonna move from that too.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, fuck it, just make sure it's kind of on there, centered, and just screw it in and hope for the best. The one thing I was really grateful for was the fact that I didn't have to unplug everything. Like, I didn't have to take out the motherboard to do it. Like, there's enough room in my case to, like, replace the processor without having to fucking unplug everything and stuff, because that would have been a nightmare. But, yeah, like, surprisingly, probably the way I describe it is it was the easiest thing I've ever done with my computer, and it's probably also the one thing where the most stuff could have gone wrong.
Right. Well, and just that heatsink, if you don't, I mean, I think you'd have to kind of really mess it up or not put the thermal paste on or something. But if you do that wrong, you're frying your computer pretty quick. Like,
well, yeah, and you'll know, like, your CPU will not play nicely, especially a quad core.
And most motherboards have built in, like, you'll start getting all sorts of, like, warning, like, this is way too fucking hot.
Yeah, and but it's also, I think it's a lot more easy for people, from what I've seen, to go overboard with the thermal paste.
Yeah.
That seems like a bigger problem to me, because you don't, like I said, you don't need that much. It's literally, you know, like it's metal on metal, and it's just this shit in between. It's gonna spread because you're making contact. So, and replacing it, I had to pull it off, and I had to clean up the base of the cooling unit, and like you see it when you pull it off, it's kind of stuck to it a little bit. You pull it off, and it's a perfect square. You know, it works pretty well on its own. You don't have to really overthink it. So yeah, those are Ben's computer tips.
Yes,
turns
that's
out
what people
it's
turn
not
in.
hard.
Now, tune in next week when we get legions of angry people that have fucked up their computers listening to our advice.
Oh yeah, but another thing you should always do, and I almost fucked up and bought the wrong i5 processor, is like go to PCPartPicker.com. Like that's a great site where you can, like, if you create an account there, you can type in all the parts of your computer's build, and then like when you want to replace a part, you can add that part to the list, and it will tell you if anything's incompatible or not. So you don't have to worry about
helpful. That was I think I talked about my last computer before this one. There was I've gone back and forth between being like a console gamer and a computer gamer, but right before I got my 360 and then eventually my PlayStation 3, I was playing most things on PC still.
Right.
And it was just well, ultimately that PC died because it was underpowered, and then my graphics card fan died, and I just ignored it and kept playing until I literally fried my video card. And at that point, it wasn't worth replacing, because even with a video card in it, it was barely running things. But at one point, it was actually when Age of Conan came out. That game looked really cool to me, and I wanted to play it. But I didn't have enough RAM, so I bought RAM, and I get home, and I'm all excited because I got this new game, and I got more RAM to put in. Like I said, I always get this like image in my head, like I'm going to put this RAM stick in, and all of a sudden my computer's going to be like
it'll run everything.
Right. And the upgrades are worth it, but they're never as like magic as I picture them being.
Yeah.
But I go to put this RAM in, and I'm like, what the fuck? This looks weird. How does this fit in here? And I realized it was a whole different kind of RAM than I had ever even heard of. Like at that point, I didn't realize that there was, because the last time I had built a computer, there was literally like a type of RAM.
There was RAM and not RAM.
Right. And that would have been in like 2008 maybe. So we've been almost 10 years since I've built a computer from scratch, and now it's like, oh, here's this CPU is a blah 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 like X37B 4 type, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what fucked me up. Almost fucked me up buying the processor. Was like my motherboard is a LGA 1150 socket, and the processor I was going to get was an LGA 1151.
Oh, man.
And it was, and I was, and it would have made that much of a difference. It would have been a waste of like fucking money.
Because typically that probably stands for like pin configuration. So like the holes in the pin wouldn't line up, and that doesn't work.
Right, and I was. It was thanks to that website that I was like, oh shit, I need to find one that will actually work on my thing. And it's not as good, but it's still an i5. And
it's one pin less good. I assume that stands for pin. Somebody's watching this like, you dumbass. That's not what that stands for at all. But
I think it's just a socket number.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it usually has to do with the configuration, like the number of... I don't mean that there's literally 50 or 51 pins or whatever, but... Yeah, size and shape and type of socket, and it all means more than that ultimately. But they literally won't physically fit into different.
Yeah. Did you ever play that Nidhogg game?
No.
It's $3.74 on Steam right now.
That would be a fun one to stream because I think you can play that online.
Yeah, that might be a deal.
Yeah, I hope that better last until Friday because I get paid. Well, midnight on.
It looks like 41 hours. So.
Yes, I'll be paid before then.
So.
We've talked about that. That's how we can spice up these spicy already podcasts, is to play like multiplayer games like that. And I don't know for sure that one has. I know it has local.
No, I'm pretty sure it has online. I think it's just a little weird because it's so twitchy.
Yeah.
That like doing it over online is not as smooth, but that's the name of the game for a lot of these sort of Steam multiplayer games.
For $3, we can check it out and try to make it work. Because it's definitely one of those type of games that's really competitive, and I think that we can really get into it like back and forth.
Yeah, because we don't hate each other enough.
I'll wait till you're beating me and just like start tweeting you spider pictures, throw you off your game.
I think I was actually playing Castle Crashers last night and remembered that I had Battle Block Theater on here, and I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, and I can probably pick that up. I don't have it on Steam because I played it on 360, but that's a...
Yeah, me too. It was in that like bundle sale thing they had, and they'll probably have another one at some point.
Wonderful game. Well, it's the kind of game at this point that pretty much every time Steam has an event sale, I'm sure it'll be on sale. But
yeah.
I'd play through it again just to get to the Buckle Your Pants song at the end, because that's one of my favorite video game songs of all time. Sometimes at work, especially if it's like a really, really bad day at work, I'll just put that on repeat on YouTube. Listen to Buckle Your Pants, buckle your pants.
Yeah, it probably has some of my favorite music. At least the music that's stuck with me most.
It's a weird time on Steam when I check almost every day my wish list to see if anything's on sale, and a lot of times things are, and I still don't buy them at that point. It's like I said, like right now I don't have money, or there's a lot of times where I have money but I'm playing other stuff, so I'm like, even though this is on sale, I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but I keep it on my wish list anyway. But it's one of those weird times right now where throughout the whole last week, I've checked and nothing on my list is on sale. And that is so unusual for Steam.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to balance out, man.
To be honest, I'm really zeroed in. Like, they could have everything on sale except for Dark Souls, and I'd still be mad because Dark Souls is the one I'm really checking for every day. Yeah. Like, I would hope, although I get why it never works this way, but it's like, oh, Dark Souls 3 coming out, that'd be a good time to put Dark Souls 1 on sale. But what they really realize is, no, Dark Souls 3 is coming out, so everybody's talking about Dark Souls. Why the fuck would you put it on sale now? Because people will get curious and buy it anyway. Like, it goes on sale when it's irrelevant. It's never not irrelevant. That's the wrong word. But when it's not the center of conversation or focus, that's when it goes on sale.
Yeah. Well, now that I have this new processor, I'm adding shit to my wish list that I couldn't play before, and it's like $10 for Contradiction should be an okay price for that game. But in my head, I'm like, fuck you. I just bought a processor to play your dumb FMV adventure murder mystery. And And now I don't want to pay $10. Put it on a sale.
So,
I
yeah.
will only pay 7. God
That's
damn
why
it.
I was. Somebody said something on Twitter. I forget what it was. There was some indie game that was like $20, and people were bitching about it. And I said, "Yeah, you'll pay 60 for AAA, but indie 20 is too much." I'm like, "What are you smoking?" And they're like, "Yeah, it should be 15." I'm like, "What are you smoking? Indie games should be $5, and then I won't buy it until it goes on sale for 99 cents."
Right.
Like, not only do we demand that its regular price be cheap, we still won't buy it until you get it
Yeah.
for
Until it's on a humble bundle.
right.
Which reminds me, Brothers, you and me both have played it, so it doesn't really apply to us. But if anybody wants to fucking play Brothers, that's on the Humble Bundle right now for $1. So,
That's kind of one of those things where if you haven't played it and you don't play it for $1, I'll come beat the
yeah.
shit out of it. Except for I can't. I couldn't beat anybody up, but
Yeah.
I'll pretend
That,
like I could come beat. It is worth $1.
that game is, I really like that game. And that's coming from me, who was like determined to hate it
Yeah.
when
After
you talked
playing,
about it.
well, between me liking it, which automatically I think puts you in the mood to not
You,
like it, but
you liked it, and I played the demo and did not like it. So
right,
those kind of combined to like make me super critical
right.
going into it, and then like it's actually a really remarkable game.
And it's kind of one of those things where, and it, I think the most remarkable part is that it came from Starbreeze, like
Yeah,
same
why
people
don't
that
they?
made the first person syndicate shooter that everybody seems to love and I hated. But
I don't. I would not say that actually. I would say Jeff Gerstmann really loves it, and everyone else I've seen seems to hate it.
I don't know, everybody in my Twitter feed, like not necessarily a big name like writers or anything, but I want to say Derek Prim. No, not Derek Prim. Derek Nichols, I think. But he loves everything.
Yeah, he's a happy guy. He's well adjusted, and
Yeah, and then there was a few people that I could see it would probably change the experience completely. You could play it with up to like 3 other people multiplayer, and there were some people in my feed back at the time that would play it like all the time with their friends, and they loved it. It wasn't to rehash a game that's not important at all right now and that we talked about before. The game itself wasn't terrible. It was just kind of a generic sci-fi shooter. But where it really lost me is when I got about 3/4 of the way through the game and it glitched and it broke my save too. So I couldn't restart and keep going. Like I would have had to start again from the beginning because that's one of those games that doesn't give you like multiple save slots. It just does the auto like checkpoint save.
right.
And a checkpoint saved at a part where a door that was supposed to open up didn't open.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that was the point where I said, this game sucks. I'm never playing it again.
Yeah, that's when you really like test like how professional you are at this. When it's like a game does some shitty thing to like dick you over like that, and I think it takes a lot to keep going after something like that, and it takes a lot more to not to hold that against the game if you do keep going.
Well, it's, yeah. And I don't, I could be wrong because it's been a while, but I don't think I did a review for the game. Although there have been times in the past where if a game really screws you over like that, I won't finish it.
You almost want to write the review
Yeah.
at that point.
And we've talked about that before. I'm still not. I don't know. I think I'm to a point now where I would want to finish a game, barring some kind of really, really ridiculousness, where it's broken and you can't possibly complete it, or it's something like a sports game that doesn't really have a flat ending.
Yeah, like I've put a lot of time into Far Cry Primal, but I can't honestly say like it wouldn't feel right for me to review it because even though I don't have a particularly high opinion of the game, it's not fully formed because there's a whole chunk of it I haven't done.
Right.
So my review of that is I don't want to play it anymore out of 10.
Right.
It's not the worst game I played, but it's just not interesting enough to.
Refer to my last Far Cry review.
Yeah, seriously. Well, and not even that because Far Cry 3 was really good for the most part.
Yeah. But I kind of felt like from what you were talking about at Primal, it falls in the same. Like, I think your review would have been very similar of Primal had you not played 3 and like basically already played the game just in a different.
Probably, but I think 3 is still a little more interesting. Just what's going on in that game is a lot more interesting to me than like what's going on in the story of
That's
Primal.
true. I guess I forgot that that's like the big complaint about Primal, and you even spoke to it that there's not really a story. It's just like other tribes bad, kill other tribes.
Yeah. You need to be a mammoth because it's a metaphor, and it's not really what a metaphor is. Game, quit beating me over the head with this.
Yeah, I love when game writing thinks it's like smarter than it is. I think the Division does that a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into that because I kind of said my piece on that last week.
Are you still playing it though?
No, I mean it's not like
Right
I'm
now.
intentionally like I'm not playing it anymore. I'm done with this. But I haven't played it since
You
last
just
week because I've got other things.
other shit to do. Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing is like how long Stardew Valley will be like woven into the framework of whatever I'm playing for the rest of the year. Because it just doesn't seem like that game really ends. You
No,
know?
I mean it just, and that's what it really floored me finding out that you'd never played like Animal Crossing or anything. And that's how Animal Crossings always were. Like they're very similar game. This one has more to offer than Animal Crossing does, but same idea. You're just
Right.
planting trees and keep
You
building
are
your house and
habitating.
fishing. Right.
Yeah.
And those games, and it's not a knock on them. I played the one for Wii. Me and my wife both were super addicted to that. And then I played the one for 3DS not too long ago. I didn't play as much on the 3DS. But it's like you just play it and it just keeps going and going until you get to that point where you're like, okay, I don't care anymore. Like,
Right.
and that's perfectly fine. Especially, I mean, well, it's not perfectly. It's just the natural conclusion to a game that doesn't have a conclusion. And then there's other people. It's The Sims would be a good example too. I mean, same thing. If you're playing The Sims, there's not an ending to The Sims, and there's people that are still playing The Sims that came out like 8 years ago. But
Yeah.
that's one that I've never personally played. But
Yeah, I've never been into it, but I love like all the stories I've heard
yeah, I mean, I
from my
probably
friends who play it.
probably could have played it at one point, and it's just one of those games that I just never happened to play. It's not like, oh, it sounds stupid and I'm staying away. And I've played like demos of The Sims throughout the year. I don't know what Sims 3, the most current one,
I think they're at four now.
and that's still like been a while since that release.
Yeah.
And I think I played it like the only time I really played it at all, and it was like a demo. It was back when they actually had demos. It was the first Sims, but from what I understand, Sims 2 and 3 and apparently 4 are basically the same thing. They just keep adding features and making it a bigger game world. But
Yeah. Or that they do a Sim City thing and take them away. Whatever
yeah.
whatever they feel like doing.
Well, the only feature they really moved from SimCity is the ability to play it.
Yeah. And people are really upset about that. That was interesting. It's always interesting when like the gaming world is really fucking pissed off about something and I can't relate to it at all because I don't fucking play that
You'd
shit.
be like, the game won't launch. That sounds great to me. It sounds
Yeah.
better than the game actually launching.
Wow, you could be that means you have more time to play Devil May Cry. This is great.
What's funny is now, years after that you almost can't call it a launch because it didn't launch it. Saying the game dropped is probably a better
It
term.
launched the same way, various failed rocket launchings
Right.
launched.
And I get at the time, like if you're that excited about the game and then you spend $60, then you go in and you had all those problems being as pissed as people were. But then in the grand scheme of things, they eventually fixed it. And here we are 2-3 years later, and it's nothing
It's
more
just-
than like a joke. It's like,
It's
oh,
too
haha, it
late.
didn't launch right. But
Yeah, I mean, you don't get a second chance at a first impression, and like the way they sold that game to people, they got so many people. Like that's the thing I don't really understand is like, why are you all this excited for a SimCity game? It's fucking SimCity. But that just comes from a place I've never really played them, never been into them. But like when they were showing that game off at events, like people were just like, "Oh my god, this is this is going to be the ultimate fucking SimCity experience, and then it really goddamn wasn't.
And I'm weird with those games because I don't necessarily like dislike them, but they have a tendency to get way too micromanagey, and I'm just bad at that.
Right.
But SimCity, I don't think I could get into that one. I talked about it probably 2 years ago when I was playing it. There was a similar type of game called Banished, except for the setting wasn't like a modern city. And it was really cool. And then one of the really cool things about it, if you haven't heard about it, look it up. But it was basically made by one guy. And it's a guy that just loved the genre. So and sometimes those games turn out, well, it's like Stardew Valley, where it's almost like a fan thing where they really understand more sometimes than these companies do about what makes that type of game good.
Right.
And Banished was really cool, but I mean, it still is what it is. It's, build these buildings and try to keep your people from dying, and I was terrible at the latter. My people died left and right. Mostly the kids. That's one thing I liked about it. When your civilization, when your town was starving to death, the kids would always go first, which is good because they're worthless. If the adults die, I have no workers left to work the field, and I'm screwed. If the kids die, they'll have more.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll die.
Basically, what I'm saying is it's way less tragic when a kid dies because you're not losing as much of a resource. And that applies outside of video games as well.
All right, that is it for us today. On that happy note, check us out at Njoystic.com. Check us out at Twitter, not at Twitter, on Twitter, at
on the
Njoystic.
Twitter.
On the Twitters, at the Twitters, at Njoystic. You can find Steve at Phaser3D. You can find me at BP Matlock. And you can make up your own mind on who hates children more, me or him.